Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to Ask Rob and Rob. It's the show where we answer your property questions. And the show, of course, starts with you. So we like to make it really simple for you to send your questions our way.
We do. Head over to propertyhub.net/ask. That's propertyhub.net/ask. There, you can leave us a message. You can call us and leave a voicemail if you prefer. Or if you want to write in with your question, we have our wonderful column in the Sunday Times each and every Sunday in the home section. So if you want to get your question in that way, you can as well. So let's listen to our first question in from Shenton.
Hi, Rob and Rob. This is Shenton. I'm new to your channel, and I just want to thank you for creating such great content on the broadcast. They are very educational and thought-provoking. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on enhancing the accuracy of property valuation during due diligence, especially in the context of the current silent crash in the market. I'm aware of resources like Zoopla that can provide estimated value, but I often find that the ranges are quite broad. I usually rely on the tactics of referencing the selling and sold prices from nearby properties, but the data sets are frequently limited. As a result, I sometimes struggle to determine the true value of a certain property, especially if we need to take the refurb cost into account. But this is critical as it has direct impact on not just the gain, but the mortgage as well. So my question is, what are your tips for conducting a thorough due diligence to obtain a more precise value of a property, especially in areas like Manchester, Wigan, and Liverpool? I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Shenton. Great question. Let's give you some guidance. The great news is it's easier than you think. There's no magic to this. It's just a common sense approach. But unless you've got the confidence to know that's the case, then how would you know? So let me give you a bit of guidance. So Zoopla Rightmove, great place to start. Type your postcode in, narrow it down to 1/4 mile, look for properties of the same size. So if you're looking at a 2-bed property, search for the 2-bed properties. And then you start to quickly get an idea of what your 2-bed property should be worth. So you've got to compare like with like. So if the condition of one property is fantastic and the other is a wreck, then the one that's fantastic should be of a higher value. But because of the areas that you are looking at, like Manchester and Liverpool, then you're going to find lots and lots of comparables because there's lots and lots of properties in those areas. So you can quickly get a bit of a range. The tools that you've referenced in your question can be a bit hit and miss because it is based on sold prices in that area. And sometimes if there's not been enough activity, then it can skew the pricing. And I've seen some wild estimates off that tool. So I don't actually use it and neither do any of the team. So just do your own assessment by looking at the comparables. That normally is enough to give you a strong indication. What you can do is on those same websites is look for sold prices in the area and start to build on it even further. And if you want even more confidence, call the agent of the property you're interested in and ask them, how did you come to that value? They should be able to justify it. If they just say, oh, well, that's what the market says, well, what do you mean by that? Like, dig in with them. So why is the market at that level? They'll then start to hopefully give you their reasons. And then they may not be good reasons, but you'll understand if they've overpriced it or not, probably based on their answer. Also, certain estate agents in every area have a reputation for going at top of market. There's always one. There's always one agent in every area that tries to push the pricing in that particular area. Try to quickly work out if the property you're looking at is from one of those agents. And again, just going through the process, looking at the comparables will get you there. You can purchase an online valuation, but actually it uses very similar data to the tools that you can access for free. So we have used them in the past, but then have stepped away from using them now because we've got confidence in what we do. I feel the real challenge to getting a valuation on a property is when it's unique. It's a standout property. Maybe it's a 5-bed detached in an area that's got full of 2-bed terraces, or it's a country home. Then it does become harder. But then those type of properties rarely work for buy-to-let as well. So in the context of buy-to-let, at least, it's not something that you'll probably encounter too often. If you really want to go all out, you could get a surveyor to give you a valuation report on a property. That's an expense. And if you just want that comfort, you could go to those lengths. But I would say that's more of an extreme rather than advice. It's down to you and your personality, Shenton. But I think with just a bit of basic research and possibly a follow-up call to the agent to understand their reasons, I think you'll get to where you need to be.
Cool. Thank you for your question, Shenton. Let's move on to our next one. This one's from Chris.
Hi, Rob and Rob. My name's Chris. I'm a regular listener to the podcast. Thanks for your work. It's really insightful, and I think it helps to keep people motivated to invest and keep believing in the market. So I own a property company with my best friend, which we've had for 2 years. We've recently acquired our second buy-to-let property, which is a 2-bed mid-terrace, and it can rent out for £875 per calendar month. We've been offered by our agent. However, they've also offered us to rent it via social housing, which would give us less income at £800 a month. But this would be guaranteed for 5 years with a 3% annual increase, and the property will be fully maintained during that period. My question is, do you have any properties that you rent through social housing, and why would you choose this method over the normal process of renting? And what are the pros and cons? Is it too good to be true? So any insights would be really appreciated as we make our decision whether to rent through social housing or rent as we have done with our other property just on the regular market. Thanks for your time, guys.
Chris, thank you for the question. Now, I did rent one property for social housing, but this was a long time ago. It's about a decade ago. So I wouldn't say my direct experience is particularly current or extensive, but from doing that and knowing a couple of other people who do something similar, I can give you some pointers. So in general, the trade-off here is pretty much as you've described. The benefit is you get your property rented out on a pretty much guaranteed basis for a long time, and you shouldn't have to do anything in terms of the day-to-day management or finding tenants, and you won't have to pay for those services either, because they'll all be done by the person who's running the scheme. The downside, the obvious downside, is that you end up making a little bit less. And in your case, it really is a little bit less. So if the difference really is £75 a month, which is what you've described, well, you're easily going to incur those costs in terms of letting fees and bits and bobs of management. So financially, on the face of it, that seems like a pretty good deal. There are things to watch out for, though. The obvious one is that you wouldn't want to bank on your property being maintained in incredible condition. So if you've got something that you've just lovingly refurbished and brought up to absolutely incredible condition, probably not the kind of thing you should be doing. You might get lucky, but depending on what the property is being used for, there might be people moving through quite frequently. It might not get a whole lot of attention. It depends on the scheme, but they'll normally say that they'll give the property back to you in the same condition that you gave it to them. I'd say it's debatable whether that ends up being the case. So there will likely be work to be done at the end of the term. There are other factors to think about as well, but I'd say the overriding one is that all of this very much depends on who is running this. Who has the responsibility for this scheme? Is it the local council directly? Is it someone they've subcontracted to? Is it some kind of charity? Because all of them operate a little bit differently. So my advice here is, if this is something that appeals to you, something you're interested in doing, so find out who is the entity that you will actually be renting your property to, and find out everything you can about them. Do whatever you can online to look into their reputation, but ideally, I don't know quite how, but ideally also find other landlords who rent properties through them and find out what their experience has been. Because like I said, the general way in which this is set up is generally pretty similar, but how well it's done is another matter entirely. So that's what I'd be looking into. One final little thing is, before doing any of this, check with your lender that this would be permitted, because you would be issuing an agreement for multiple years. Some lenders are okay with that, some are not. Even the ones that aren't, if you explain the situation to them and you show them the contract and they're happy with the provisions in the contract for them taking back possession of the property if they need to, may be okay with it, but it's worth looking into that before you go too far down this road, just in case from a lending point of view, it's a complete non-starter. So Chris, good luck with your decision. Hope that helps.
Well, that's us done for another week. Thank you for listening. Hope you found that useful. You know what else will be useful? Tuning in on Thursday for the Property Podcast, because we got a great episode lined up for you there. And you can find us in the Sunday Times on Sunday. So until those wondrous events take place, take care, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.